We have the sparkly in front of us. It must be time for the Genius Zone here on Edge Radio Australia. Our genius, she's here. She's ready. She's primed. Big smile on your face there. What's going on, Terry?
Well, I'm smiling because you're calling me a genius.
Yes,
but
why not?
Actually, the genius is usually the one sitting in the hot seat, but then I could be in the hot seat. I guess in a way I am the hot seat. So I guess I am the genius then.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll take that. I'll take that. Thank
Why
you.
not, indeed?
Thank you very much. So can we talk about the Genius Zone and how the name came about?
Let's do that. Because we've got a subject matter today, which is
it's pretty deep.
So let's start.
And I just heard that somebody else is doing the same topic, and it's one of somebody I know. So how that has happened, but I guess it's in social media, it is in the public media, it is all over the news.
That's right.
It may not be overseas, although it could be overseas.
Look, it's a worldwide problem.
It has, but I guess it has scared the life out of many, many people. So we're going to talk about the Genius Zone and how that name came about. But just to complete what I was saying, our topic today is about how to support parents and children in through abuse, childhood abuse, whether that's sexual abuse, whether that is violence abuse. And, I believe that what we're going to talk about anyway in the show is obviously coming from a place where we're not giving advice, because obviously that is not my topic. So I do not specialize in children. That's the first disclaimer. The second disclaimer is it is definitely a topic that I usually see 25 years later.
What a great point. And you were bang on the money on that one.
Yeah.
It's okay. We're kind of dancing around the subject, obviously, and the subject today is?
Yeah, it's how do we support parents and children through child abuse.
Right. Because, and why I sort of wanted to reiterate that is because what you're saying about 20 odd years later, this is a very real thing. I mean, certainly in my life, people have come my way and people I care a lot about have actually had this problem, that something from their childhood has come back up and really affected the rest of their life and their adult life. So engaging with someone about NLP, someone like yourself, expert practitioner here, you can actually genuinely help, right?
Yeah, well, after the fact, Aaron, and it's a sad thing to know that it is always, down the track. Yeah. And it's not necessarily, look, occasionally I have had children that have come into me, but I have never yet in my entire 17 years as a practitioner ever had to consult a child where last week or even last year they had been abused. So I guess the topic for me is more about how do we help the parents? What do we do after the fact? And if I do see a child, it's usually minimal 10 years before I see them. So that's the light of where we'll be going. I mean, it would be great if someone can actually come into the media at some point and talk about how to avoid it. But I think the government have got that sort of under control in terms of—
I could not disagree more.
You couldn't disagree more.
Yeah.
Well, they're looking at, because it's almost like they're having to address the elephant in the room. It is a really serious issue, and you can only imagine. I mean, my kids went through daycare. So all three of them went through daycare. And, how do you know if your children have been abused through the daycare, system? That's the first thing. But, what they're talking about, and it's not necessarily something that's going to come to light, but it's kind of after the fact. Yes, we're going to put cameras in every rooms. You can never control, even if somebody has got an absolutely perfect record, that does not mean to say that they don't have a weakness, because in my experience, I'm not talking about child abusers or sexual predators. I'm talking about people who have seriously had a very bad issue. Now, let me just give you an example. And obviously it's private and confidential. I'm not going to say the person's name.
Sure.
But I had a guy that came in to see me. He was an amazing man. He was a very astute person. He held down a job. He looked after his family, had a wife, had a beautiful 5-year-old child.
Okay.
But do you know why he came to see me?
No.
Because he had these horrible thoughts of what he was going to do to his daughter, but they were more fatal thoughts, like with a knife and drowning her. And he did not know where this came from. And, you know, I mean, the fact that he was talking about it and wanting to deal with it told me that he couldn't help it. Like, he
felt it was a compulsion.
It just came out of nowhere. It's like we all have terrible thoughts.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a shocker, and it must have scared the life out of him. But, you know, the fact is that he knew he had an issue. He did something about it. Now, who knows what goes on in the minds of predators? What I have come to know as a practitioner is that usually hurting people hurt people.
Well, yes.
You know what I mean? So you've got the situation where quite often a person who has been abused as a child or has been through that will end up doing that.
Well, statistically.
Can do, not always, but in some cases.
Here's the problem, and there's so many levels of problems on this one, and I certainly don't want to excuse any of this by any stretch of imagination. I couldn't be any more against child abuse. It's not possible, right? And anybody with any level of heart can't see why this would happen. But here's the great problem. So the figures out there at the moment, right? Okay, the stats are that about a third of people who are actually abused go on to abuse. Okay? Here's the problem. So much of that is a lie.
Okay.
So much of it is
well, it's probably a generalization.
Well, it's no. I'm using figures that the government have gone through studies and so forth. But why I'm mentioning the lie is that false accusations are the biggest problem here. Right? And we now live in a world where false accusations are they skew the figures. Right? Now there are horrible people out there. There are bad people in the world, right? So my microphone's not interested in playing the game for some reason. Now there's horrible people out the world, and they're hurting people. And I think our role of people who are not involved in that and people who want to be protectors of children, we need to step up and we need to fulfill that role and protect children as much as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
But we also have to make accountable those who lie about it, right? Those who lie about it. And anybody who knows me, I know where we're going to go on this subject, Aaron, but it's going to be the family court. Okay, in the family court industry, where right now you've got lawyers who go out of their way to actually tell women to make false accusations about this sort of thing. These give false figures and these lie about the situation. And why I get angry about this is so many levels is because
it's becoming your genius zone.
It could be. It's this. Real victims are the people who get ripped off out of this. When people lie about things, when false accusations come out, okay, whether it be physical abuse, sexual abuse, whatever, mental abuse, when it dilutes the reality for those who are actually suffering from abuse. And people need to be held accountable for that. So, it's twofold here. I think that, obviously we need to look after people who have been abused. It's a no-brainer on that front. But we also have to make sure. But do you know
the statistics of how many people do get abused? Like if it is very, very high.
No, but I'm telling you right now.
I can say I was abused as a child.
Right.
So, they say the stats are extremely high of child abuse. And, I feel that getting back to the name of the show and back to the genius zone, and there is no excuse for bad behavior. There's no excuse for someone who commits a crime that is woefully bad, like we're talking about child abusers. There's no excuse for that, whether they were abused or whether they weren't abused.
That's not an excuse.
It is not an excuse. But, what my point of, being is that, it's like when I came into the online space, I had to think to myself, who are my people? Who is my niche? And I hated that question. And the reason I hated that question is because all of a sudden I had to take the work that I was doing because neuro-linguistic programming and hypnotherapy helped people that were being abused. It helped people that were abusers. It helped people who were addicted. It helped all these people that had problems. Not one of these people ever came in and said, and sat down beside me and said, hey, Terry, make me a superstar, or Terry, make me the greatest person on the planet. I never heard that, or, turn me into someone who is going to create wealth, for a good cause to save the world. Never, ever did I ever hear a positive. It was always, you need to help me with this addiction, this sabotaging thought, this trauma that I've been through. So this is what I discovered. On the other side, this is where the Genius Zone was born. It wasn't about the people and whether they were 40-something-year-old male or mothers or teachers or whatever. It was about who they became when they were healed and when they literally moved into their space of unleashing that pain. So for any parent out there that's suffering at the moment, I can tell you right now, they're going to go through incredible guilt. That is going to be the biggest thing that their hearts are going to be ripping out. I can only imagine how many people have pulled their kids out of daycare, and just because they're in fear of what's happening. But the fact is, you cannot protect your kids.
You can't wrap them in cotton wool for the entire world.
Just because it happened in a daycare centre. It happens everywhere. And for those worldwide, yes, we've got this going on in the media. That's why it's on the, top of everyone's conversation at the moment. And it's a very relevant conversation. And at the end of the day, every single person that I ever saw that did come through and they released their trauma, they released what had happened to them, that's when they were able to really soar. That's when they were able to step into their zone of genius. And that's where the zone of genius was born. It wasn't about me, really, although thanks for the compliment.
Got to tease you a bit. Got to have fun with it.
And maybe it is my zone of genius too, because I went through so much trauma and I grew up and I had trauma as a child. I had, really bad childhood trauma, and I also had teenage trauma. So obviously it was that probably spun it around. And not only that, with permission of my child, who I called today, she was one of my children that I suspected that had been at the hands of abuse. Not in the same way, but in a different way with another child. However, I was going to share that little story, and maybe, what I can do is just brief people on it. Look, do you feel guilty as a parent? Oh, my God, it rips your heart out. Did I know what I know now back then as a 27-year-old woman? Absolutely not. I knew nothing. I just trusted that I could take my little girl to daycare. She would be safe.
You would assume that, right?
This would all happen. But I changed daycares one time and she went somewhere different. And I'll never forget it because I was in real estate. It was my real estate days. And as I said, I did ring her today and I asked permission about this. And so what had happened was I picked her up and I was with my father because my father and I hung out together a lot, being in real estate. And she had the horrible glaze across her eyes, the one that a lot of parents are horrified. So it was like, I'm here, but I'm not here. Now, I knew in my knower, because even though I wasn't who I am today, back then, because we never are.
No.
But the simple fact is that I didn't recognize. So for her personally, and this is where I believe we can't have too many people talking about this topic, because each and every person that comes on the show to talk about this topic, because as I said, I just found out somebody else is going to do this, and I can't believe that. But great minds do think alike. But 100%, I saw the repercussions of what had happened to her approximately 14 years later.
Right.
So at the time, like at the, in the instant of picking her up, I knew. So the intuition was always still there with me, even though I wasn't like, I didn't know all the, NLP or anything like that. And I said to my dad, something's wrong with her. And he just sort of flagged it, he just brushed it off. But I kind of knew something was amiss.
Okay.
And the way it came out, and I'm not saying this is going to happen for every single person, but the way it came out and it manifested is that if that person, so everybody's going to feel different. So every child, like for me, I would have felt different to her.
Of course.
So every single person's abuse will feel different and have a different impact. So for her, she felt out of control.
Okay.
So guess what manifested to actually take back that control?
Has she become a control freak?
No.
No?
She became anorexia nervosa.
Oh, right.
She actually, that's when that food, and look, they even show statistically, I've got also a dear beloved friend who's saying that a young girl who's probably younger than my daughter is currently going through anorexia nervosa. And I said, she said, well, how did you know? What, like, was it food with Jack? I said, no, it's not food. It was not food. It's never about that. Anything we do, whether it is if we drink too much, or if we do drugs, or if we're, we're doing something against our soul, and it's really out of control. What that's doing is we're trying to numb the pain, but we're not deliberately doing it to stuff our lives up.
No, you're self-medicating.
You are.
Yeah.
You're self-medicating. And so what I said to her, it may not be the same along the same lines, but it usually does stem from childhood. And I think somewhere along the lines, for any parents out there, as far as I'm concerned, whatever happens to our kids, whether it is that our kids are drug addicted and they become drug addicted when they get older, the parents suffer. And the parents feel so much stuff. And I can remember a time when two people from down south in Bunbury had come into the clinic, and they were seeing Ian actually. But the fact is, because Ian's a chiropractor, my husband, and we had a clinic. And so, they were pretty well known to us. But Ian sort of brought them into me and said, do you think you can help their son? And started to talk about what was going on and the drug addiction, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
And I said, the first thing we need to do is speak to you, the parent, right? Because that person was still at home. They were still, and so the parents were caving in to their addiction, giving them money. They were feeding the dragon. So the parent really requires to heal themselves, even if that parent is fully devoid of any kind of issue, and maybe the child has had something like abuse happen. The best thing that can happen for that child is that the parents go first.
Do you think?
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Because then they will have the ability to know, firstly, how to handle their children without feeling the grievance, without feeling the triggers, without feeling the anger, without feeling all of that pressure. I'm not saying that the children shouldn't get treated. Don't get me wrong.
And I think, again, no matter everybody involved needs personal responsibility, right? So whatever decision you make and the path that you choose, Like, I mean, I'm very lucky, I suppose. I mean, I didn't go through that sort of thing. I wasn't abused as a child and whatever. But I've had people very close to me who were.
Yeah.
Okay. And I've seen the patterns. I've seen the damage that they do. And they self-destruct. They damage themselves on purpose. And it's this whole lack of personal value, self-esteem, a lot of
it definitely affects their self-esteem.
It does.
Definitely.
It's so interesting in a horrible way, but they want to actually punish themselves. Right? And I see it a lot. Yeah. So as a parent, if you're going through that experience, your child's going through it, but you're living through it, obviously it's very the pain.
Yeah.
Geez, I tell you what, how do you not blame yourself? How do you not tear yourself to bits?
Exactly. See, that's the reason that that point demonstrated. That is the one, big reason that parents have got to really console themselves about it and know that they can't be watching their children 24/7. Did I blame myself for many of the things that happened to my kids? Yes. I think it comes with the territory.
Part of being a parent, right?
It does come with the territory. I actually don't understand why we have parents who will deprive a perfectly good parent, not mentioning any names, Aaron. Did I just do that? Because what they're doing is they're depriving their child. Now, whether it's physical abuse, did you know that they say that sometimes mental abuse is worse than physical abuse?
I think full stop. As somebody who's experienced this, as I say, through people in my life and all of that, the psychological damage and psychological abuse has had a far longer lasting and very, very negative effect. Right? Kids who had physical abuse, I'm not saying that's okay. Clearly it's not
absolutely
okay.
not.
No, it's ridiculous. We live in a world where you've got to make that disclaimer, but obviously it's not okay, right? And I'm Gen X, right? So I got in trouble. I got smacked. Okay. I was a complete pain in the butt. I don't know how my parents survived with me. I learned to run with my butt 3 feet.
You were a good boy.
I was so not a good boy.
You didn't even smoke a cigarette.
No, exactly. Well, no, I was too busy.
One cigarette. You had one
misbehaving
cigarette in your entire life.
One cigarette.
You're the only person that I know that's a Gen X.
Yeah.
Because I'm a Gen X as well, and you are the only person Gen X that I know that's only ever had one cigarette.
Just peer pressure never really worked on me, right? So it was just a thing. It wasn't a thing. But I think, I appreciate that. I mean, I was a pain, right? Okay, and I grew up in a generation where, kids got smacked and I got smacked.
And it's not a bad thing.
Look, here's the thing. I actually believe in it. I'm still,
Absolutely.
As a kid who got smacked, I am pro-smacking because there's a difference between smacking and abuse, okay? Big time. People need to, and a big part of the reason why so many kids now have so many problems is because they don't actually understand consequences and they didn't actually have any genuine discipline as a child, right?
Yes.
So I don't ever want to, I just want people to make that distinction. Just because you were smacked as a child doesn't mean that your mother and father
were abusers. You. Absolutely not. Otherwise, my parents would be the biggest abusers.
Exactly right.
I don't know how many wooden spoons, and Mum watches all my programs, but it was Dad anyway.
Right.
But, he broke so many wooden spoons on me, right? And, I must have been just the baddest kid. But, look.
How many curries could not get stirred in your house?
I know.
There was no wooden spoons left.
I know.
Come on.
Honestly, the amount that were broken. But can I just say something to anyone who may be listening to this, from a person who has, number one, been through it myself.
Yep.
Number one, as a child, if you are abused, you somehow think it's your fault. I can say that from my own experience.
So sad to hear that.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Right.
This is one of the reasons that from that, the point of view where I'm coming from, say for weight management, okay? So people would come in and they'd want to shed kilos.
Yep.
And the amount of people that would get a little bit cranky with me because they'd say, "You're doing therapy, Terry. What the heck has that got to do with me wanting to, trim down and lose some excess kilos. And I'll say everything. Because it's what is that you are carrying? Like, what are you carrying around? What are the baggage? Do you know how many women actually, this was my point here, actually covered themselves, their body, subconsciously camouflaged themselves to make themselves be unattractive just at a subconscious level because they were abused when they were a kid and they wanted to be unattractive.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah, it's unbelievably sad. Because I don't want to break any confidences here. So, but yes, people in my past went through abuse, right? Simple as that. And my personality type tends to make myself, quite frankly, I'm attracted to people and understand the way I've said that.
Yeah.
Not in a physical or a
energetically
sense.
You are.
Yes, energetically I'm attracted to people who have gone through
it's like a soul contract. That's what they call like the soul contract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, I want to help. Like, I want to take away their pain.
Right. Yeah. Right? And your soul knows it, even though you may not. So when you meet that person, if you have this uncanny attraction to them and you don't know why, your soul knows what's happened to their soul. And it's that thing where the healing
exactly.
thing.
And like, there's so much to it. I mean, like, and don't become the person who needs to fix everybody. Right? It's not good.
You can't.
You can't.
Yeah.
Right?
You can't.
But you can be there for them, and you can.
Absolutely.
You can share some love with them. You can share some intimacy of really genuine conversation, or be there for them physically and emotionally, right?
Yes.
All of that sort of thing. There's no ifs or buts about it. But ultimately, you can't fix them. There is no greater crime than someone who hurts a child. Right? No greater crime.
And that includes a woman who deprives her children from their father.
Well, that's a child abuser. But there you go.
Well, there you go. It's still the same thing,
of course
right?
Yep, it's complete child abuse.
Yeah.
As I say, with the people...
Just because we're talking about child abuse doesn't mean to say we're talking about men abusing children. It can be women.
Okay. Side note, because, again...
Sorry to interrupt.
No, don't be silly. This is how a conversation works. Like, okay, so this has come up over the last couple of days, obviously, because what's been going on. And, the first thing I said straight out, right, and I mean this, okay, there's a very easy way of fixing these problems, or a big part of this problem, right? Stop removing fathers from children's lives.
Yeah,
okay?
absolutely.
Because protective fathers, okay, there is nothing there. Okay, I would take a bullet. There is zero doubt in my mind I would give my life in a second to protect my children.
I have no doubt about that.
There's zero reservation about it, right? Zero. So good protective fathers are the best way to stop any of this going on, right? I've got examples, but where do I go?
Have you been able to really let that go, though? Because there was something I was talking about, and this is the thing where, if you're a parent and you feel like your child I think it's worse sometimes when the parent's going, I wonder if, like, did my child get abused or did they not get abused?
Okay.
And that can be actually worse than, not knowing or being uncertain. And I don't know where I was going to take this, but it was linked into something that you just said. And I don't know what I was going to say.
I'll go with this.
Totally
I'll go
it.
with this.
Sorry
okay.
about that.
No, don't be silly. Okay, it's...
Lost the plot.
As I say, as a man, okay, my role in life is to protect the people I love. Full stop. That's it, okay? So when you're not in a position, like, I know right this second in my life, right this second, my children are being abused. And I can't do a bloody thing about it.
You just triggered me what I was going to say.
Okay.
Because I asked you if you had actually let go of that and forgiven. And I know you haven't, Aaron.
No way.
And the reason being is because, listen, if the universe had a voice and if the universe had, arms and legs and did something, if Mr. Malloy is angry like the storm, and I do not blame you one tiny little bit, and we've got to have that. I mean, you've got a pulse, right? Of course we're going to have that. But guess what the universe does? The universe goes, he's got this. I don't need to take care of it. But this is the thing, and majority, like the DeMartini breakthrough, where most of the people in the room somehow have been abused. You've been abused. Everyone's been abused.
You know what? We've all got our woe is me story, right?
Way or form. And the forgiveness element in that, okay, is the hardest part of all. You've heard me even talk about something that is critical, where a woman was doing a breakthrough experience with me, because I'm certified in that DeMartini training. And it's bloody long and boring and arduous. Sorry about that. But anyway, it is. Side note. But you know what? When it came right down, push came to shove, and she had to forgive the perpetrator, she said, "You cannot expect me to do that, Terry." And we were having a Mexican standoff, almost chest to chest. And I said, "Well, that's the reason that you're sitting in this seat, and you just paid X amount of dollars to do it." And she said, "Well, I'm not doing it." And I said, "Well, let's work this out. Let's talk it through. Can you follow the guidelines here? Because I didn't make it up. DeMartini did, and it's pretty damn good. It's called the Breakthrough Experience." She said, "Because the perpetrator murdered my husband." Now, it's like, how do I say, let that person off the hook? How do you say that to someone?
Okay, well,
how do you say that?
I really wanted to talk about these subjects that are coming out. No, rather than our own personal experiences. But I'll give you this. Right. I don't care who sees this. Obviously, I don't care, if a particular person sees
might get 150,000 views, but hey, it's all good.
Sue me is what I'm getting at. I don't care. Okay. My ex-wife is a child abuser and abused me, right? Okay, she is a domestic abuser. She abused me. She abused my children. She abused her ex to a degree and pushed him until he eventually killed himself, right? That's a truly evil person, right? But I forgive her.
Are you sure?
Is a caveat.
Okay? I was the caveat. My son always reckons I have caveats, Aaron.
There's got to be one.
What's your caveat?
Mine is actually
subject to.
I know there's something underlying that caused her to be like that.
Ah, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
I actually feel a level of sorrow for her.
Yes.
That she felt that she had to hurt so many people and have so much control. And why did she want control?
Exactly.
Why did she want control so much? Because she lost control in an element of her life.
Yes.
And her damage is created the person who wants to go and damage others.
Well, we don't need to read any of these questions. You just answered. You just answered the answers that I would have given to those questions. And that was that you've just shrunk that person down, but you've reframed it absolutely solidly, like a real pro, and turned it around, seen it from that point of view. I think the only thing you didn't do is literally go back in time and hold her as a baby in your arms and look into her eyes and say, "I love you and I forgive you." I think that's the only thing you didn't do. But by the way, that's a technique.
No, I appreciate that. And I'm not going back that far. But I think, like, from my point of view on that one is, okay, someone had to build the monster. Right, there's a difference between a psychopath and a sociopath. For a start, okay. So psychopaths are born that way. So if you have a psychopath in your life, well, a
psychopath is born that way.
Born that way. Okay. A sociopath is made. Right.
Oh.
So the same sort of basic personality traits and all that kind of thing is about hurting people, damaging people, and these child abusers are not normally. They are almost always one of those two types. They're either born with a defective chip, effectively saying that I'm that kind of animal or that piece of filth, or something has happened to them, right? And that's the difference between the sociopath. The sociopath, something has happened to them or a decision has been made in their life where they decide at a subconscious level to become that monster, right?
Oh, right.
And so in my eyes, the way that I've dealt with it is I go, okay, I don't know if you were born that way, but I certainly, I believe you weren't.
Yeah.
I believe that you became that way because of events of your life have created the monster that you became.
Absolutely.
And that allows me to forgive.
That's
with the
beautiful.
caveat.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
Because, you know, like,
I don't feel like this show's ready to hear the 15 presuppositions. I mean, they're pretty short, but I'm going to do it out of respect. I'm not going to share them. I was going to share them, but you can Google it. What are the 15 presuppositions of NLP? What these presuppositions are is more or less a lot about what you're saying. It's a way to reframe a situation and look at it from a different angle. And, you know, for example, everybody's coming from, wait for it, you hate this one, a positive intention. Now, how do you put that into a perpetrator's lap? And also, it's never too late for a happy childhood. Look, guys, abusers, perpetrators, people that have suffered at some kind of humiliation in your life, there is light at the end of the tunnel. You can heal yourself, okay? I'm not saying I've had people that want to heal, you know, straight after an event that's happened when they do actually need to process, and that's where counsellors do come into play very well, because you do like if someone dies, you can't just go, right, get me over that. And I have had people do that because they've done the work with me to know that this is going to help me get over it. And I've said, no, you need to go away and you need to grieve. You need to process what is actually going on and then come back. But I feel that just because of the sensitivity of the topic, and if it falls into, because yes, there has been someone in my circle who hasn't been directly affected but has been touched by what's going on, which is what inspired me to do this today. And those presuppositions could make people angry. Right. And, you know, but they're okay once you've processed, if that makes sense. It does. Once you've done a little bit of the yards and come through.
Well, like, you know what? We all in life, we've got to do the work, right? I don't know what the meaning of life is, but I think it's love. But as far as the process goes, we all go through experiences, whether they be positive or negative, right?
Of course.
And if they're negative, we've got to do the work, right? Like we've got to actually find a way of processing them and turn that frown upside down. Like turn that.
We're living when we go through this. This is part of our, you know, this is part of the fire that, you know, refines the diamond and the gold. And, you know, if you allow that to be. So there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. And also something that was said to me, which I felt was very helpful, and that is, this is their journey. You cannot change a destiny. If you are a God-fearing Christian, for example, and I know you had a beautiful show going on last night. I must look at it too, by the way, so make sure you tune into the one thing. But, you know, if you're a God-fearing Christian, you know, that believes in predestination, God knows every hair on our head. And, you know, it's not that he makes bad things happen to us, but sometimes he allows that to happen. But I think the biggest kind of reframe for me, what someone said to me, and I should know this anyway, but this is not your journey. This is their journey, not yours. So just sort of stay in your own lane and stop getting so emotionally kind of intertwined into it. So I do feel the parent will do very well to heal their guilt, to heal their, you know, to help them get their head around that it was not their fault. You know, if your child, like, this is what some Christians would believe and some people would believe, if your child goes through child abuse or sexual abuse, it was written. It was written. See, this is a predestination, which is a huge topic. But it's like, it's not what happens to them, but finish the sentence. It's what
happens for them.
Exactly. And as a result, and you know, like, have you ever gone to the movies and paid money to go and sit in the movies? And these days, do you know how expensive it is to go to the bloomin', you know, movies? Did you really? Did. Oh, what did you see?
F1, the new Formula One
Was
movie.
it good? Trust you to see that one.
Well, I had to.
Well, you would have paid a pretty penny.
It was all
you know,
right.
so, you know, and the fact is you've never been to a movie, and if you did, you'd be bored stiff, where everything was rainbows and butterflies.
Yeah.
Especially if there's a superhero. And so, hey, guys, I have to say, pretend you are the superhero, and you've got to look at conquering what has happened. You know, it's about overcoming that level of what is happening in you and what you need to deal with. But have we got any time for some questions?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just important to actually ask some questions here. So let's go for this one here, because this is obviously on the subject of what's just happened in the last few days here in Australia. So thank you, Tanya from Queensland. Really appreciate that you've sent a message in here, a question. My daughter's been in family daycare since she was 3. I'm paranoid since hearing the news about abuse in daycare centres. Are there any signs to look out for our kids?
Okay, so the answer is I don't have any answers. Okay. So sorry to disappoint. But I did mention earlier that I saw a specific glaze come over my child's eyes. And, you know, if they're acting differently. Now, the other thing that kids will do, remember I was saying, I shared before about how we think it's our fault, but you also fear talking about it because of it. So a lot of children will not talk about it. I know I didn't. And I think this is common because they're scared. They're scared. They don't know what's going to happen. So I feel that, you know, Tanya, I remember saying, I can't remember which child I said it to, but you know, there's nothing you cannot tell me.
Yeah.
And I want you to know you can tell me anything that happens to you.
You need to establish that relationship with your children early on. Really
let them know that they're safe. You will keep them safe, that you will understand, and, you know, and give them that space. And I think the older they get, when they're young, they're probably going to be a little bit more open to those suggestions. But as they get older, they get a little bit more secretive. So it's almost, you know, I just want you to know that I'm here. And if you have got something, don't feel for 1 minute you have to hold this to yourself. And it's okay, because everything is okay. Everything will be okay.
This is all about establishing like a relationship, a genuine relationship with your children, where you're there and you're present. It's not just, quick, in the car. I mean, we all, like, life gets busy and in the car, kids are not going to get it. I'm going to go on a different tangent on this one for Tanya. I don't know what your arrangements are or your life's like, so I don't know if this is applicable to you, but this is something I did in my life. Okay, how do I say this? All right. Someone in my life had somebody else in their life who I knew, right, was actually a paedophile.
Right.
Okay, I knew. Why did I know? Because the person had told me straight outright that this had happened to them and that experience, right?
So, sorry, you knew that the pedophile was the pedophile?
So, okay.
Or you knew that someone was a pedophile because the child said or told you were told in confidence?
When the child became an adult, adult told me that she had been sexually abused by this particular person. Okay, does that make that clear?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So here's what I did. And then this person allowed this piece of crap in our lives, okay?
Yeah.
As a family. Politics, we'll just call it, you know, family politics, right? So I don't want my child to be anywhere near this particular person. And this is where I'm going to point down the camera and talk to the men here. So here's what I did. I knew the family politics involved. I knew that I couldn't put pressure on, anybody involved in it as far as a woman or a child. So I went straight to the source. So I went and visited the pedophile.
Good on you, Aaron.
And I explained to him what I was going to do to him if he looked at my child in the wrong way at all, was ever alone with my child, if he ever put himself in a situation where he even had opportunity. I explained in very, very, very descriptive detail what was going to happen to him. Guess what?
You. It stopped.
My child was safe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
sometimes
guess what?
You got to come heavy.
You sometimes you've got to. You got to be a bloody man.
True.
You've got to actually be a man, right?
And if you're a woman, sometimes you've got to be a biatch.
Yeah, you do. Absolutely. Now, in this particular case, here's where I'm going on this. Right? People who do this sort of thing to children do it for many, many reasons. But one fundamental flaw or personality trait they've all got, they're all weak. Right, so if you
who's all weak?
The pedo, the
pedophiles are weak.
Is actually weak.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So we've used that word a few times. So YouTube's going to pull this down.
Oh gosh.
So
see you later, guys.
Yeah, see ya.
Damn.
Certainly, it's going to be hard to see the replay. But okay, where I'm going on this is that they're weak. Though the actual predator is a weak person. Otherwise, they wouldn't be preying on someone who wasn't as strong as them. So when a man comes up and very strongly explains the situation of what's going to happen in their life if they cross that boundary, guess what? They run like a little child.
Oh, yeah.
Terrible analogy.
Because you've blown the whistle.
Yeah, yeah.
You've blown the whistle.
Yeah. And this particular person was 6'6",
and full of tricks.
Absolutely. A very muscular fellow, all going to carry on. So he thought that he had the physicality to basically carry himself in that. Yeah, guess what? Ran like a little child, as he should have, because he was a weak, the physicality of him enabled him to write checks that his personality couldn't actually.
I do believe there is definitely, just from experience, that there is a space of time where we have to put on that hat and be very, very stern. I mean, I suffer from the, in the line of personality traits, the avoider. Okay. So the avoider avoids conflict, so won't always say what's on their mind.
Yep.
But interestingly enough, as a result, it causes more conflict.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So the very thing you are avoiding comes and chases after you like big time. Yep. So when sometimes, there's the moments that I've been heard have been when I have put my foot down, when I have laid it on the line, and when I've just said, right, boom, 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 boom. And, it's just a matter of being very assertive. And I know that for parents out there, you will be assertive. And what we've got to look at is, what is the greatest thing that could come out of this whole crisis saga, what's been going on in Australia at the moment, or in Sydney specifically. And, because there are some people that, oh God, you can't even imagine, that have suffered so badly. But, quite often I'll say, but you are a legacy, because your legacy in what happened to you caused the government to change, or the act to change, or
be
something.
The change.
Be the change. Yeah, the genius zone.
Oh, look, I had the opportunity to interview someone who had actually gone through severe historical sexual abuse at the hands of Western Australian politicians.
That's a popular one at the moment.
Yep.
We're really going to get this pulled down now.
There's no chance.
That's it. I hope you watch this live, everyone, because it's not staying up.
But here's the thing. This is why we exist here. This is why Edge Radio Australia exists, right? Everybody deserves a voice. Everybody deserves the right to be heard.
That's right.
Okay. And this is, quite frankly, this is a platform that we built for this very purpose.
Yeah. So can it stay on Edge Radio? Like, will this?
What I'll have to do is I actually have to put the video so it's only available on our website, because I'm telling you right now, YouTube will definitely drag this.
It'll definitely.
Yeah, algorithm will pick up the words. So away we go.
That's right.
All right. We have run over time, but I do want to ask this. There's another there's a question I just want to bring up from William. So I'm just going to bring this up on the screen, and if we can answer this one, I think this is probably just to. I think it's just important to answer William's comment there. Thank you, William, all the way in New Zealand, mate. I was sexually abused by a family member at age 5. It has destroyed my sexual relationship with my partner. Can NLP or hypnosis help me with this?
Trust you to pick that question. I mean, this is a huge question. I know,
but I think it's so important. I think
this is a huge question. First of all, what I want to say, and his name has escaped me, but one of the greatest podcasters, he's an American guy. He's just got married. Help me out if anybody knows, or put it into the comments. He has the School of something. Anyway, he is an amazing podcaster, such a great guy, so much charisma, so successful. He was totally molested at the age of 5 years old. And that could have totally ruined his life, but it turned into his zone of genius.
That's fantastic.
So, it's the School of something. It's a young man. Look, if it comes to me, I will definitely share it in the comments. Look, this trauma, William, and the next trauma, say for someone who's like the lady I was talking about before that lost her husband because of such a severe situation, it doesn't matter. It is all trauma. So in the world of neuro-linguistic programming and hypnosis, it's this the subconscious mind is not looking for the details. The he said, she said, this is what happened, that person did this to me. What it's looking for is, number one, what does it make you feel like? What are the patterns as a result of it? And what do you notice is the common denominator that is like a pattern coming through your life? So even though you may have got abused back here when you were 5, you may have been abused just verbally by a partner or something and left to feel, like a doormat or whatever it is. So whatever the energetic feeling was at 5, you'll find that there's little patterns of the same feeling, but completely different events, and some mild, some as mild as anything. But they are there because the subconscious mind is almost attracting it. So so what happens here, William, is when you go back in the world and you find yourself someone who really knows their stuff, not mentioning any names, Terry Messenger, there I go again, but someone who does know their stuff seriously, and you take them, you go back to that space, but you go back to before you were 5 years old and where you were free. And that's where you do the recoding. And we do have a show coming on in the next few weeks where that's going to happen. And a guy's going to be an expert on the recoding, rewiring and refiring. I think that's coming up in about 2 weeks. So keep your eye on this spot. Thursday, 5 p.m. Australia time. Unfortunately, 5 a.m. New York time, and I think about 12 in UK.
Well, pretty good for William. He's in New Zealand, so that's going to be
and
quite
so
late.
he's 6 hours ahead.
Oh, okay, mate.
So about 11 o'clock. 11 if you're
the good
watching.
thing is, obviously you can watch the stream afterwards.
Exactly.
If YouTube don't pull it down.
Most people do. In my
exactly. Well, that's
world,
exactly how
they watch it after, not during.
We like a bit of convenience these days, don't we?
That's right.
I want to throw this out to William from a personal standpoint. Is I have watched in my own life, not personally as far as, but on other people that I care about, who have actually have looked at NLP and have used hypnosis to exactly what you're sort of saying, go back beyond that date, and it's made massive improvements in their life. So maybe, look, my answer is going to be, from what I've seen, yes is the answer, mate. Go and see someone, hook up with Terry, whatever you need to do, get the right advice, because, your sexual life with your partner, it's an important part of your relationship, right? And you want it to be as great as it can possibly be. And, a lot of us have got hang-ups over sexuality for whatever reason, and, you're certainly not alone. So, why not? Be the sponge, right? Go seek the information, talk to the people, soak it up, and get the right advice. Improve your life, mate.
Beautiful.
Shall we get out of here?
I reckon.
I'll tell you right now, because we've only
got
got 10 minutes over. It's not much.
Not much.
No. By our standards, we're doing all right. Thanks for being part of the Genius Zone. Absolute pleasure. Thank you for your questions that come through the week. If you have any other questions that have come through on other streaming platforms or whatever, don't be shy. Send them through, and we can certainly talk to you there. You can obviously watch this anytime you like, or if you want to listen to the replay, it plays on Sunday. What time does it play?
3 p.m. if we are lucky. I'm not sure we're going to get a replay on this, though.
No,
Aaron.
we can. We've got control of that. That's okay.
Okay.
So if you want to listen,
have to go to Edge Radio.
That's right, edgeradioaustralia.com, because guess what? They can't censor us there. Thanks for being part of the Genius Zone here on Edge Radio Australia.
Share.